Serious, people whose spouses have died and are happily remarried. What's it like? Do you still think about them? How does your partner feel about it? Attention. Serious, tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of the subreddit. Message composed to =r@askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. After we graduated and both landed jobs in a city 2,000 miles away, I married my college sweetheart. We bought a house, made plans, didn't include cancer in that plan, and I lost her after 6 years of marriage and an additional 9 years of being pals, friends, best friends than dating. 3 years later I met a really amazing woman. Smart, witty, resourceful, beautiful and passionate. We were married a year later. It was her first marriage, and she's older than me, but her parents, as they got to know me, respected and really appreciated my path in life. It's been 14 wonderful years now. I still miss my first wife, but not in a debilitating way, and my wife knows that, and respects it. My wife appreciates that my first wife was part of what molded me into the person I am today. Now I've been married more than twice as long as I was before I lost my first wife. We've had our difficulties, which led us to adopt our son, who is awesome, but both of our lives are better together and better because of where we each came from. It's a beautiful thing, and somehow I know that my first wife would have been really good friends with my wife if she had known her, and my wife is really great with my first wife's extended family. We get together often. Yes, I hit the lottery with both sets of in-laws. Glad your in-laws are good people. My fiance's family are such great people. I feel like I won the lottery too. It's a good feeling. I guess I am a little different than some of the others who have responded. I was married for a long time, 29 years. No kids, just her and me. Sudden heart attack. I won't even try to describe the loss. I still can't talk much about it. Even typing this is emotional. I remarried after about 2 years and I have been married now for 12 years. So I guess my natural state is to be married. I don't talk about my first wife, or even talk about anything about that past life. I explained what happened when I first met my second wife, but I sensed as time went on, she felt she might not measure up since I clearly idolized my first wife. So I just put it all inside and that's where it stays. In a box inside me. Sometimes the grief just comes out. In the first 5 years or so after my wife's death, it came out a lot. Not so much anymore, but it still does and you never know when it will happen. It's sort like a wave at the beach. You are standing in shallow water, and something happens. A sight, a sound, a song, a smell, and you suddenly recall. And then without warning a giant wave of grief just comes at you and knocks you down. You try to get up, and another knocks you down. Finally you stand, and everybody is acting normal, but for you the world looks wrong. It takes a long time to get back. My first wife lost her mother when she was just 29. One day, when she was 39, we were driving on a summer Sunday morning, windows down, music up. I looked over and she was crying. ? What are you crying for? I asked. I was just thinking of my mother. It's been 10 years, I said. She just looked at me with teary eyes. You don't understand, she said, but one day you will. I miss her. I had the same experience with my mother. When I was 16 or so, I walked into her room and she was sobbing. I asked her what was wrong, and she said I miss my mom. She had died 30 years prior. My mom died when I was 19, and I understand her pain all too well now. My husband died suddenly 4 years ago. It was hard. It took me a few years to pull myself together, but eventually I moved to a new city, found a job and made a new life. I'm 33 now and I live with my so. We're not married but talking about it. I still think about my husband every day. I miss him. I love him. It's hard to explain. My so tries to understand but he can't, which is okay. He doesn't like talking about past and likes focusing on the future. That's why I keep my past to myself, but I also keep it close. The hard truth is, I think I will never be as happy as I once was. And that's also okay, because I am happy, just not so young or naive to think that things can't fall apart in split second. It's bittersweet, because there's always a bit of pain there too. My husband died 5 years ago in April. We had a 2-year-old son together. I really struggled for a while. However, I eventually went down the path of healing. After lots of work and raising my son, I met an amazing man. We are engaged and expecting our first baby together. There are still days, rare, where I feel sad, but it's for what could have been. Every year, we send a lit Chinese lantern with a letter for our loss. My fiance and I are incredibly happy and he is incredibly supportive of me. My son and him are very close and have a really cool bond. There is life after death, but you need to do the work to heal and find love again. The work is painful and gritty but totally worth the journey. I told an earlier post I was crying and meant it figuratively. For some reason the minute I read we send a lit Chinese lantern, I had this picture of you, your fiance and your son sending off this lantern while your first husband looked down from above and I lost it. My husband died at 34 of cancer. Our daughter was 8 months old. She is my saving grace and a blessing. It was hard then and it still is. I still cry and grieve. My daughter, now almost 7, asks questions and wants to know about her dad. I try to keep communication open with his family because my daughter needs that, but sometimes I feel they blame me. I still talk to him and think about him all of the time even though it's been 6 years. I met my second husband 2 years to the day of my first husband's death. I love him just as much as I love my first husband, but it's different. Our relationship isn't the same and he isn't the same person my deceased husband was. I am not the same person I was 6 years ago. I do feel this marriage is more difficult because I am dealing with an ex-wife and stepkids. I can't really compare the two relationships though because they are very different people. I love them both wholeheartedly. My second husband is very supportive and respectful of my first husband. He understands that some days are still hard for me, but it doesn't mean I love him any less. I'm sure sometimes he feels he is competing with a ghost, but I try not to make him feel that way. He encourages my daughter to ask questions and spend time with her grandparents. I will never forget my first husband and there are times I still struggle and get mad at him for dying. It's hard and it sucks, but happily I made the choice to keep moving forward because I am still living and he would have wanted that. My wife passed away a couple years ago. It was a lot and not something I could even begin to put into words. Some really rough days, even tiny things you don't think about will catch you off guard. Eventually met a wonderful girl who I just got it off with perfectly. We are engaged now, so not married yet, but in May of this year we will be and I am very happy. I still show respect for my late wife. Make sure her grave is kept and I have a lot of her stuff still that I am keeping. Pictures and whatnot. My fiance is totally cool with it and is very understanding. When we first started dating she asked me about her and wanted to know about her. I think that helped get past some things. But I am happy and can't wait to get married. That's a great attitude for her to have. I don't want you to stop loving her. I just want you to love me, too. I'm twice widowed now. It takes a good 5 years to get a grip on life again. In my own personal experience, the first one I try to date always seems to be my dud one, and then I meet the one I was meant to be with. You just have to give yourself to grieve and heal and don't rush things. I've had 2 great loves but short-lived. Now once you the world I'm in, being twice widowed, it's a whole nother ball game. I'm at 15 years on my first loss and 5 years on my second loss. That's beyond tragic. I'm sorry for your losses. It's weird sometimes. My wife passed away and just left me and my son together. He was young enough that he doesn't remember her as anything more than a picture on the wall. I reconnected with someone from college later on and we ended up getting married. She's one of the kindest souls I've ever known and helped me through a dark time. She's helping raise my son like he's her own and he loves her unconditionally. She's also very good about telling him about his mother to make sure that he knows about her and all she did for him. I didn't intend to get married again, it was just something that happened out of the blue. My son and I are very happy now, but there's still the what would life be like if the accident hadn't happened? There's nothing wrong with wondering. It sounds like you have both processed the grief and learned to live with it. You don't let the what if control you. And that is what is important. My husband of 11 years died in 2009. I'm not remarried, but I'm in a serious and committed relationship with someone now. He's a never ever to marriage type guy, so someone like me who's content not to marry, having had a long, happy, excellent marriage already, is perfect for him in a way. I'm glad you asked this question because I'm having kind of a rough week with current things not related to my being a widow. Silly nitpicky things. Shark Week doesn't help, and thinking of this answer is a good reminder why he is so awesome. Current doesn't have a jealous bone in his body. He says he thinks he was somehow born without the gene for jealousy. The other side of that coin is he's also not at all romantic and doesn't do things like buy Valentine gifts. So all along he's been totally cool if say one of my husband's favorite songs comes on and gets me started crying. He's always let me cry on his shoulder. He doesn't mind if I talk about my husband a lot. In fact, he likes my stories about him. A few months ago I got a very emotionally charged Facebook memory. It was the video photo montage that I made for my husband's wake. Hundreds and hundreds of photos and videos of he and I on all our excellent adventures. It really knocked me for a loop as I hadn't watched it or even thought about it in several years. I was bawling on current SOS lap. Thinking about it later, I wondered if after 6 years now he's getting tired of it, so I asked him and he said basically, no, not at all, that he can't possibly understand what it's like but could imagine it's not something you just get over one day, etc etc. I still think about my husband every day. When I see a new movie he'd have loved, I still get angry that he never got to see it. Stuff like that. I still want to talk to him about stuff. My overall attitude about it is that I'm lucky to have a life with two great loves. Facebook is a real butthole. My first wife and I were married very young, me 18, her 17. But that was after dating through high school for 3+ years and knowing we wanted to marry for a long time. I knew she had a deadly illness, cystic fibrosis, before we started dating. But after I'd already fallen in love with her, I knew the entire time we were together that it wasn't going to be the fairy tale ending of us sitting on a porch and rocking chairs with our grandchildren. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was that I got a chance to be with her and made her happy every chance I got. When she died in my arms 9 months after we were married, just about a month before her 18th birthday, it was devastating for everyone. Her mom, dad, sister, me, my family, everyone simply fell apart. Her mom and dad more than anyone. This wonderful girl who touched so many people with her positive attitude was gone from us forever. She deserved to experience so much more. It wasn't fair. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never, ever find anyone else. Fast forward a few years and I met my current wife. This April will be our 25th anniversary. She knows almost every story I could tell about my first wife. She knows I still love my first wife, but she also knows that doesn't mean that I love her any less. She understands that just because she's my second wife, doesn't mean she replaced my first wife. She's very respectful of that and knows the difference and isn't threatened by it at all. If she was, we wouldn't have gotten married and we would certainly not have lasted 25 years. I probably think about my first wife at least 4-5 times a week. Even after all these years, she's still on my mind that often. I don't have pictures up around the house of her, but I do have some on my PC and in my Facebook profile. I post a link to the CF Foundation and other charities on her birthday because many of my high school friends on Facebook knew her and appreciate that. It's never bothered my current wife at all. It was a lot to deal with for an 18-year-old private in the army, but I'm glad I had the chance to make a difference in her life. I grew up a lot knowing her, and my current wife gets to enjoy the benefits of that. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. Garth Brooks. My husband died 5 years ago. Just last Friday was the 5th anniversary. We were married 4 months and expecting our first child together. We both had one son from previous relationships. I sadly spent almost 3 years dating some of the worst men around. I wanted so bad to just regain what I had. I was scared, alone, a mom of 2 and in the army. I didn't want to do it alone, but I was. I eventually gained momentum and strength and embraced being single. I met my now soul last year. He listens when I talk about Josh and he supports me during the good and bad days. You've probably stopped reading. Meeting him has genuinely brought so much love and trust back into my heart. Nope, I read that whole thing. It's great that you've found someone who makes you happy and helps you out. I hardly ever post on Reddit, but given this very unique question and my circumstance I figured I would respond. I am 31 years old and I was a widower at 25 years old. My wife passed away at 24 a week after we had a miscarriage. It was awful. We met when I was 20 and she was 19. So together for 5 years but only had one anniversary. A little over a year after she died I met someone online playing World of Warcraft. Wow, was my time sink when my wife passed away. It helped tremendously with the loneliness that just filled our home. We hit it off pretty immediately even though neither one of us were online searching for a spouse. It was really pretty nice because she knew everything before we even considered dating. It wasn't like I picked her up at a bar and then 2 weeks and had to explain everything. We got to know each other very well over the next 6 months and after a few trips to see each other, I lived in Texas, she lived in Michigan. We decided to try it out and I left everything I had back home. Here we are 4.5 years later and we just celebrated our first wedding anniversary in October of 2016. To answer the questions, what's it like? It's awesome. There was a lot of despair in the 25-year-old version of myself. Hopelessness. The idea of a soulmate being gone and how can you ever replace that? Well, finding an amazing and understanding person helps a lot. Do I still think about her? Yes, a lot. I still have her urn and 2 wonderful pictures that were blown up to poster size for her funeral that I keep. My current wife absolutely doesn't mind at all. She is very supportive. I keep everything in a closet at our house, but every now and then I go to those pictures for comfort. How does my partner feel about it? She couldn't be more supportive. She understands that there are a few days a year where I need a lot of support. First wife's birthday, our anniversary, and is very great about it. I was really shocked when, early in our relationship, we were having an argument and she asked how my first wife and I would have handled the dispute. It was really pretty incredible. I'm a very lucky person to have found 2 wonderful brides in my life. I got married in October 1999. My wife died 5 weeks later. I had a lovely relationship after that with a wonderful girl which lasted for a couple of years. She was aware of my past, but it was never an issue. We parted company because we were at different stages of our lives and needed different things. As for the second part of the question, I think about her all the time. I had sleepless nights thinking about her rotting and it took a while to stop doing so. Some years later, I met another woman and we eventually got engaged. It was through her that I realized I had never quite got over the loss of my wife. See, it wasn't her dealing with it, it was me. I felt guilt and remorse. None of it really justified, and it took her to point that out. We're okay now. I have to say that I initially resented her position on it. She shook me up, but in the end she was right. Time to deal with the grief. I'm not sure I've ever come to terms with my wife's death since it was so unfair, but I have certainly compartmentalized it in a way that allows me to give my love to someone else, and she is very supportive. My dad and mom met in high school, married the week after, and we're married 29 years when cancer stole him. I knew mom would never remarry, even though he told her to go live and be happy, even finding love again. She's now married to my second father for 7 years. This is his first marriage. Before marrying her, I accidentally caught him at my dad's graveside talking to him and asking for guidance and loving his ladies as my dad had. I was 26 at the time. My second dad, stepdad isn't a title I like, adores my mom, me, and my daughter just as my dad would have. They talk about him openly, just as he talks about his fiancée who died too soon. He joins our laughter with memories, yet builds new ones too. There are still pictures of my parents among pictures of my mom and bonus dad. I know your question was for the couple, but as the child I can't even tell you how amazing it is for me. I feel my dad's presence never really ended. It was just redirected through a man who is nothing like my dad, but everything my dad would want for my mom and me. I think the hardest part for me is accepting that again, we had to experience loss. Although I feel lucky because I didn't experience loss that was a regretful loss or a loss through bad relationship issues. Your second dad taking to your first dad's grave brought all the tears. I'm so glad your mom finds someone so special. My dad and I recently lost my mom and I hope he finds someone who will love him. And I, the same way your second dad has loved you and your mom. Perhaps not 100% on prompt, but hey, the person I was with, well, engaged to, technically, killed herself. We hadn't been together very long, 1-2 years, but it had been my first true love so it hurt. Since my family is incredibly conservative, they'd never met her, and neither had my friends, as I was very cautious of news of my non-straight dating reaching family, so grieving was tough, and I basically stifled all emotions for a good few years. In the meantime, I met my current long-term so it took me a while to open up about my past in terms of losing my previous partner. I think about a year or year and a half until I told the full story, as it involved opening up that sealed drawer of emotions in the back of my mind and dealing with them. Yes, I still think about her. Recently, a book I got from her got given away to a library and promptly picked up by someone. It took me a day to get over the loss of one of the last items I have to remember her by. On her birthday, I still get that fruit cheesecake she always wanted to have for any occasion. And on Halloween, when she died, I have a bit of a tougher time celebrating and being relaxed, and usually need to spend the day at home if I want to go out in the evening to get over emotions before I meet up with friends. Miso is incredibly supportive and understanding of it all despite not having similar experiences in the past. As far as I know at least, he helped me process a large portion of the grief and was open to listening to stories about her, and to take part in my remembering of her. All in all, so far so good, considering the circumstances. I lost my husband the 1st of August, 2015. 3 months later I met my now fiancé, Justin. He lost his wife the 11th of February, 2015. I have 2 sons, 7 and 8. And he has a daughter, 7. I did not intend to fall in love as quickly as I did after losing my husband. We were together 8 years, but meeting Justin was an instant lifeline. He understands me better than anyone else could, and vice versa, and the appreciation we have for each other is incredible. We both know how quickly life can be over, so every day we treat as our last. You can definitely fall in love after tremendous loss. In some cases you can even find a healthier, more fulfilling love. We have both said that we truly feel like we were meant to be together. We just had to go through losing our first spouses to find each other and to be the best partners we can be for us. My husband swears that his late wife sent me to him somehow. Wonderful to hear you both found love again. I made a throwaway for this because my current husband and oldest son know my main account. My first husband died in 2007 in Iraq. He was in the army. We had a 4-year-old. He was 30 and I was 27. I think about the days after getting that knock on the door, and it was all a big whirlwind of figuring out funeral details and coordinating his family from one state, my family from another, all to have a funeral in a different state altogether. I spent those first 2 weeks so focused on making sure that my son was okay, my mother-in-law was coping, and my own fragile mother was doing okay that I didn't take time to worry about myself. Once all the noise and distractions were gone, it was horrible. Waking up on that dang army base knowing that my husband wasn't just deployed, that he was gone forever was enough to make me question if I should even get out of bed at all. I went from living this crazy life where we up and moved every 3 or so years and making amazing friends all over the country, to just not. I mourned my husband and I mourned who we were as a couple. 6 years later I met my current husband. We've been married for 2 years. He's amazing. He never competes and is always open to hear stories about my first husband. Be a shoulder when someone walks by wearing Nautica cologne or I randomly hear Save Tonight by Eagle Eye Cherry on the radio. That was our deployment song. But the person I was in 2007 isn't the person I am 10 years later. Sometimes I'll look back on those days and can feel every tear and sob. but most of the time I look back and feel removed from it, like I'm watching someone else live it. My current husband acts as an amazing stand-in father to my son, but with the added benefit of not really being his dad, so sometimes it's okay to just be a friend, which is exactly what a 14-year-old boy needs sometimes. I can never stop loving my first husband, but I love my second husband equally, differently, fiercely, passionately, but equally. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.